Hey everyone, welcome back to the All Music Matters on That podcast. I'm your host Brian. Join me today. I welcome a special guest. We got Ken Martinez, aka Purge of Relics. How you doing, brother?
How we doing? Glad to be on. Thanks for having me.
No worries. I guess so. Which part of the world are you hailing from?
I'm in New York, Queens more specifically right now.
Big concrete jungle where dreams are made of, as Jay Z would say.
Yes, you could say that.
In manner of speaking. I
Dreams
guess
or
it
depends.
actually I was going to say which metal bands actually were out of Queens, New York, because I thought some of them are heavier metal bands came out of Yonkers.
Yeah, you have Anthrax, of course, is probably the big one from Queens. Those guys are out of Forest Hills, legends. One of my all-time favorites. I don't know who else is really out of New York. As far as the big thrash bands, most of them were out of the Bay Area. Anthrax is kind of the outlier on the East Coast. I mean, you have, I'm wearing the shirt right now, Overkill, but that's New Jersey, as far as East Coast.
It's like close enough. So, all right.
Yeah, right.
But still, gotta represent. So it's all good there, right? I guess,
Yeah.
how you been recently? What's new?
Not much, man. As far as the music, I've just put out a new single called Death by Integrity. It's currently on Bandcamp as we speak. Tomorrow it's hitting Spotify and all other platforms. Um, I'm slowly but surely working on a new album, which I was actually hoping to have done for the summer, but I was way off on that trajectory. But better late than never. You know, Fortunately, I'm not a professional musician doing this for a living, so I kind of do it when I have the time. You know what I mean?
So you're about everybody else, so I can see why there too. So
Yeah.
you can tell that by your music on here, just a little bit here too. But Ken, I want to thank you so much for coming on here. And the way it's going to work is, I'm going to ask you some questions. Let's get to know the man behind the music as well as who he is in general. So, you ready?
Cool. Let's do it.
All right. So start with the beginning story here. So I guess, who are you? And I guess how did you become a musician?
Let's see. I became a musician. I would say around middle school, seventh to eighth grade is when I actually just got into music in general. Didn't really like formulate my taste yet. I was just kind of listening to what was ever on the radio or whatever was popular. It could pop music, rock, alternative rock of the time. Um, when I actually started getting into playing music was shortly after. I believe I saw my high school band performing. Obviously it wasn't exactly cool music, but something about the bass kind of struck me. I'm like, it looks kind of cool, and I mentioned it at home. And my older brother, he's almost 20 years older than me, um, who was a musician his whole life as well. To this day, still doing it. I think he was working at a music store at the time, and he bought me a starter bass and little 10-watt amp, and that just set it off right there. I started learning by ear. Again, whatever I can get my hands on. It was Nirvana songs, Green Day songs, even Metallica songs. I specifically remember trying to learn "Creeping Death" by ear. For a 15, 16-year-old kid, I did pretty good. Uh, Looking back, I probably butchered the crap out of Cliff Burton's parts. I was nowhere near it, but also to be fair, you could barely hear it on those records. But I did my best to emulate the guitar. So that's how I learned. To this day, I don't even know how to read music. I'm very limited on that. Probably for out of fault. Probably should learn that by now. But I did pretty good so far. Around high school, early high school is when I started my first band with a buddy of mine called Cadus Rex. It was I guess you could call it like a thrash crossover project. Did that for a few years, played a handful of gigs, nothing big. That broke up, entered the workforce. And from there, it was just like projects here or there, playing on my own, writing my own music. I started like 2010-ish, started a project with a fellow bandmate from the band I just mentioned, Cadus Rex, called Three Hippos Deep, which was more of a like funk rock experimental project. Because later on, I got into like a lot of different kinds of music. I mean, I'm not just a metal guy. I love everything. Um, and yeah, from there, it just kept going. Play a little bit of guitar too. Picked up some guitar licks on the way. I started writing on guitar, and Yeah, I mean that's how it started back in middle school, playing that bass, butchering Metallica songs, and the rest is history.
Just because some people in the comment being like, "Blasphemy! How dare you, blasphemous Cliff Burton's play style." So
I'm gonna make it even worse too. I was playing with a pick. I was they're not gonna like that either. I started to learn to play with my fingers later on. Like I said, once I started that Three Hippos Deep project, started picking up some slap licks and scales and stuff like that. But I was a pick player. I think I was trying to emulate Jason Newsted more than anything else, playing Cliff Burton's parts and trying to look like Jason Newsted because I thought he was the coolest motherfucker on stage.
yeah, yeah, Cliff, he was somebody else there too, and it's tragic we lost him too soon. And
Of course.
actually, I was going to say I was going to try to picture you trying to do Orion from the Master of Puppets album.
Yeah, I learned that too. I learned a bunch. I haven't played him in years. I did pretty good on that one, but again, like you got to hear the isolated parts to really know what he's doing. I was just going by the guitar. All of a sudden you hear Cliff Burton's like, wow, it's like a whole bass orchestra going on underneath that.
I was going to say, geez, what'd you think of when he did Pulling Teeth? Or I think it was Anesthesia Pulling Teeth. I think that's how it was from their Kill 'Em All album.
Oh yeah, yeah. And then I remember seeing the live recording of it on Cliff 'Em All, the VHS. I had that. I mean, I wore that thing out. That was an incredible performance. I mean, no one sounded like bass. No one played bass or had that bass tone like that back then. You know what I mean? That was wild. Definitely ahead of his time.
That's for sure. And speaking of Jason Newsted, I forget if it was last week when I did an interview. It was 1 or 2 weeks ago, but someone told me that because you couldn't really hear Jason Newsted that much on the Injustice for All album, someone actually went back and pretty much just boosted up the bass so that you're able to hear it a lot better, so it's not being drowned out by everybody else.
Yeah, I've seen that on YouTube. I think it's called Injustice for Jason or Injustice for Bass or something like that. That was very cool. And I heard those isolated bass tracks too, and he slams the crap out of that bass. I mean, he plays hard, and it was a shame they didn't have that potted up in the mix because he was playing his heart out.
It was drowned out because they boosted up the bass too much on Lars Ulrich's bass drums. So
But ironically, as much as I'm a bass player at heart, that's my favorite Metallica album. Go figure. And you can't even hear the bass on it. I just thought it was just so mean and harsh sounding. I love I think that was their nastiest, angriest record.
actually, yeah, someone I interviewed who said they thought that was their least favorite album. So I'm always a little shocked whenever I hear that.
Yeah,
So,
I have a lot of like off the cuff tastes. Like my favorite like Slayer album is like Divine Intervention. Like who listens to that? I don't know. There's something with me and just like the unsung underdog of albums and bands and stuff like that. Like I like kind of like the more rare niche stuff.
I think it shaved a couple of years off of their lives too because of how much time it took just to actually get that album out, let alone mixed, produced, and everything. So,
Of course.
just to fill the audience, when they were doing Divine Intervention, this is based on Kerry King's words. I forget the studio's names, but they were just in one studio. Then a guy says like, "Oh, it's gonna be somebody else here pretty soon here," and he didn't even tell him like, "Hey, I'm moving in with somebody else" or something like that. I forget how the whole story went, but they jumped between like 3 studios before they finally got the sound. I guess they were still experimenting with analog. I don't know when they started having some of the technology that we had today, so they couldn't
Yeah.
just record over top of it. So they had to basically start all over when they got to a new studio. So
Yeah, that's you could tell like that album was a mess. It like Divine Intervention, like the mix on that, the drums, like even like the original issue of that album, like some of the songs like they cut off at the end, like Ditto Head, all of a sudden it just stops abruptly. Like these little flaws that are in the album, but I don't know. I dig that. Like I like the more raw, like human sounding stuff, and like you hear all those mistakes because there's stories behind those mistakes. Like just like you said, like now everything is so computerized and perfect and digital. Like it's just everyone has the same procedure they go through with recording. I feel like nowadays, and it's not as the recording process and the production process is not as artistic as it used to be. I think that's an art just as much as the music itself.
yeah, you're in line. We'll touch that a little bit here too, because I have asked about AI, and I'm sure it's probably what it's intertwining with. But let's talk about
Oh boy.
Purge Relics here. So I guess what's the story behind it, and how did you come up with the name?
Purge of Relics started during the pandemic. Not exactly an original story. A lot of people think started projects during that time. They had a lot of time in their hands. Uh, as I mentioned before that, I had a project called Three Hippos Deep. It was very different from metal. Like I said, when I early on, once I found my taste in music, it was metal, metal, metal. It was thrash, hardcore. It was even like I'm not gonna lie. Hey, I grew up in the late '90s, early 2000s. I was a new metal dude. One of the first bands I ever heard was Korn. That kind of set me on that path of heavy music. So I have to give them that credit. Um, but then, like in the 2010, started getting into a lot of different kinds of music, and that's when Three Hippos Deep formed. 2013, released a few EPs under that, and then of course, the pandemic hit, and we weren't getting together. We could, you know, and a couple of things coincided. It was the fact that we couldn't get together to write the music. It was me and a buddy of mine. It wasn't a solo project; it was two of us. And also, I kind of had an itch to start writing heavy music again. I haven't done it in a while. Kind of got away from it. I was still listening to it, but I wanted to play something different. Well, yeah, let me try to write some thrash riffs again. I don't see if my hands can even do it anymore. And that's how that started. And also it was kind of like a practice project because I um, I never really handled the production process of it. My buddy was doing all of that. I did the writing, some of the writing. We co-wrote it, and so I'm like, let me hop on Ableton and see what I could do, programming drums, like learn. And luckily, I got pretty decent at it. I'm not great by any means. It's a working process, but it just kind of became my little like project of like, let's see what I can do on my own. And like even lyric vocally, I never did vocals before. I'm like, let's try something different here. Let's buy a cheap little shit mic and see what happens when I scream into it. And you know, lyrically, a lot of thoughts started coming up during that time. You started looking at the world, and that kind of helped with the lyrical content, and it all kind of just flowed out of me. Um, so yeah, that project, it took off for me. It was good. It actually came out really good. It was a lot of fun to do. It was definitely a venting tool for the time. A lot of people were going through tough shit, and yeah. As far as the name, Purge of Relics, um, how do I describe that? It's basically what it sounds like. It's the relics, like these things that hold. The way I look at it is the things that hold society back, hold us back as people. These things we hold on to that just keep us from progressing forward. Um, you can look at that anything from like a particular type of person holding you back, or just an ideal or a social construct to try to get away from. Just in with the out with the old, in with the new. Basically, what that means, and you can interpret that how you want in your own life.
I was saying, it almost did sound like it was like an out with the old, in with the new sort of stuff. So I can see why.
Yeah.
Actually, I was got a picture. Did you struggle with like trying to form a band name at first? Because it seemed like it was just one of those ones. Here's all the ideas. Let's use a dartboard and then just throw it. Whatever it lands on, that's our band name.
No, not at all. I mean, I did toil with a few different names, a few different ideas. I can't really think of them off the top of my head. And then I don't know where Purge of Relics came from specifically. I don't know if it's just a phrase I must have said talking to someone. And I just thought it sounded awesome. I think maybe it was going to be like a song title at first. I'm like, nah, that's too cool. I want that to be the banner name, and it looked cool in the logo and the tag that I made for it. I'm like, nah, this has the whole aesthetic. I'm going with this. Yeah, so it was a pretty concrete decision. It wasn't just random. Once it came up and I saw it written on a piece of paper, I'm like, no, this is it.
Is it just strictly you, or do you have somebody else who kind of helps out with the music too?
Not on Purge of Relics. No, it's all me. I wrote it, record all the instruments, program the drums, vocals, lyrics. Yeah, it's a one man thing.
That's pretty cool. I guess you do it right downstairs in the man cave. Is that where you do it?
Yeah, yeah. Just in the corner of my foyer, my apartment, my computer. I'm using God. I'm using an old. I'm using like Ableton 8. I think they're up to like 12 or 13 now. I was just like, yeah. I just was using what I had. Um, and it was like I said, it was all new to me. Like I was constantly on the phone with my friend, who's a great producer and is very good with Ableton. Like asking him, he was basically my tech guy on the phone. Like, how do I do this? How do I do that? Whatever. But I was the one who did it and wrote everything. But I definitely had. I keep calling my buddy. I'll say him by name. His name is John. Longtime friend. Um, Basically a brother to me. Um, he's really great with it, and so he helped me out with some of the technical stuff. Like I said, it was a learning process to get through that. But it's, like I said, it probably would have came out a lot better if someone else handled the production. But like I don't know, it just kind of became like it's my thing. I rather it be my thing that I did and maybe come out a little, maybe not as great, but at least I can call it mine. You know what I mean?
Actually, I was thinking about between Hunger Force. There was actually a little scene. I don't know if you ever seen the show, but
Love the
uh,
show. I worshiped that show back in the day.
Master Shake said like this one. It's like, damn it, this is my vision and it's my way. I'm doing it my way. It was along those lines. I wish I could remember it, but
Love
uh,
that show. That's one of my favorites.
yeah, that's for sure. We can get to that one in just a little bit later. But actually, since you mentioned about COVID, I guess so you did mention about music wise. I guess how bad did COVID impact family and friends, and I guess really just your lifestyle in general?
Um, well, I gotta say, like, and before I go on that, how it affected me personally, it has to be said. Obviously, it was an awful thing. Affected a lot of people in a horrible way. A lot of people lost jobs, money, their lives. I understand that, so I'm not going to try to spin it and say it was a good thing. I was lucky that my job, um, I didn't lose pay. I kept my regular salary. We did work on a limited schedule due to they didn't want try to keep people separate as much as possible. So we worked on like an altered limited schedule, but we kept our full pay. So I was lucky in that sense. Um, so for me, uh, like it didn't. Well, two things about me: I'm not a big people person, and two, I hate working. So, and it was two things that I didn't have to deal with. So for me, it was actually kind of like a nice little break. But obviously, that wasn't the case for everyone, and you know, uh, it was tough. But as far as keeping separate from family and friends, that was tough. Not being able to see the people who were close to you, but like the rest of the world, fuck off. But but yeah, family and friends, of course. That was it. That was a tough time, like not being able to see anyone. Holidays were tough, you know. But it did give a good amount of time for reflection and just kind of like step back and look at the world and what it is and what it could be, what it was, what it is, and what it could be. Um, so in that way, it was helpful. I actually, I know you probably want to talk about lyrics later, but just a little preview. There are some songs that are based off of that time period, and a lot of the lyrical content was derived from that time because of that time.
Yeah, I see. And I guess did you have any brushes with COVID? Were you specifically okay?
Are you asking if I've gotten COVID?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I have. I was lucky. I didn't get it. I didn't get it bad. I've had it a couple of times. I got it like later on. Um, Thankfully, it was not. You know, it didn't hit me that hard. Maybe it was one of the the lesser strands that were going around afterwards. So I lucked out in that sense. No one in my family got hit with it too hard. At this point, like everyone's had it to some degree. But no one I knew got it. that bad. The 2020 COVID is, if you want to call it that,
I think now it's descended into like a summer sort of sickness, to be honest, because I actually came back from England and Scotland, and since it was a little bit cooler climate out there, some people ended up getting like colds, that sort of thing. They started passing it to me.
Yeah,
There's some sort of bug going around here too. It's not just me now. It seems to be some other people that I know who started
yeah.
coughing and all doing all that stuff. So
So, it's not all just COVID. Just because COVID exists doesn't mean that other diseases and viruses aren't going around as well. There was a point there where like every time someone sneezed, like, oh, it must be COVID. Like, no, actually, there's the cold still exists. The flu still exists.
I would say that it kind of reminds me of how Pepe Le Pew was whenever they saw a skunk, and everyone would start saying "Le skunk" or that sort of thing too, "Le Pew" or something like that. So
Yeah, yeah,
there's always a stereotypical French sort of thing there too, but you can say why. I mean,
yeah.
that's what it's kind of descending into now with the whole thing with COVID. So you can see why.
Mm-hmm.
But in all seriousness, it's good to see you are doing well there, Bates. So it's good to have you around here.
Yeah,
So I guess here, let's talk about influences real quick. I guess who really inspired you too? Because obviously we had talked earlier about how Queens and other parts of New York they were kind of known for bringing out the metal scene and everything here too. So I guess was that your big inspiration, or I guess who else really inspired you?
Oh man, that's a lot. I'll try not to take up the whole interview with just talking about influences. I can go on forever, so I'll try to give cliff notes. Yeah, early on, once I discovered heavy music, like I said, when I first got into music, it was just like whatever was out there. I didn't know what was what. Um, I think like a lot of people around my age, like Metallica started it. Got entered the door for like real true metal. And then from there, the floodgates just opened up, and it was, as we talked about before, Anthrax, Megadeth, Overkill, what we got, SOD, Exodus, Testament, Motorhead. I said already. Yeah, all the old school thrash, um, and to me, the greatest metal band of all time is Pantera, the real one. No disrespect to Charlie Benante and Zach Wild, I love them, big Black Label Society fan, but that is not Pantera. That's a tribute. But yeah, I think once what solidified me to go down that heavy route was the day that I bought Diabolos Musica, because this is '98, so I was like eighth grade. Diabolos Musica and Far Beyond Driven on the same day because I heard them on Aggressive Edge Radio, which was a radio station out of Hofstra, a radio show on the radio station for Hofstra University at the time. Listening to that, that's where I heard a lot of my favorite bands for the first time. And then from there, that it was all about metal at that point. And then it transcended into death metal. Heard Morbid Angel. That entered a whole new realm. I was like, what the fuck is a blast beat? God damn. Um, Cryptopsy changed my life. Montreal, Quebec, tech death band, legends, None So Vile, insane, disgusting. Nile, Dying Fetus, all that stuff. There's so many more bands, but like I said, I don't want to go on forever. And this is just metal because, like I said, I'm into like a lot of other stuff, different stuff too. So I could go on about all other things, but trying to keep it more about Purge of Relics, the Purge of Relics quest line, storyline, if you will. Lately, into a lot more hardcore, and like a lot of like power violence stuff like that. I just love the more extreme stuff right now. I like seeing music that's a little bit more threatening and scary. I feel like metal kind of got a little too sterile lately, and it kind of feels like synthetic anger. And to me, hardcore is like, they're actually talking about some real stuff, and they're really pissed off, and I like that, But tons of bands, tons of music, spanning all different genres and subgenres.
Yeah, that's for sure too. Actually, I dig a lot of the metal that you're into as well. So we should hang out more often. So
Yeah, man. Okay, man. Look, when you first messaged me about doing this, I looked you up because obviously, like you get a lot of messages about, hey, you want to interview or we can get you hits on this. And I'm like, oh, let me just make sure this guy isn't a bot or like a serial killer or something. So, I found I found your YouTube page and I saw your videos. And one of the first things that sold me, I saw, obviously you're a drummer, very cool. And I saw some of your covers and I saw you covered Slayer's Hardening of the Arteries. And I'm like, this guy's the real deal. He actually knows what he's talking about. No casual surface level fan knows that fucking song like that. I'm like, wow, hardening that's pretty badass. So I'm like, all right, you definitely got some good taste there yourself.
Thank you. Actually, funny enough, the reason I actually started doing that song was because I had already did The Hell Awaits and then At Dawn They Sleep. I did those for Halloween on two separate occasions.
Yeah,
And at some point, I'm like, you know what? It's only 7 songs on that whole album. So I already got 2 of them down.
yeah,
Let's
yeah.
do them.
I saw you did Kill Again. Yeah, you might as well just complete it, do the whole thing in its entirety. Badass.
At the same time, too, I wanted to make sure I was comfortable because obviously it's Dave Lombardo for one thing here too. So you want to make sure, like, okay, am I comfortable doing this? I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to blaspheme Dave Lombardo's drumming. So
The way I blaspheme Cliff Burton. Yeah, don't make that same mistake.
yeah, you
Yeah,
know what sucked is a couple times I know you mentioned hardening of the arteries. I got 2 comments and it just really kind of pissed me off in a way. Obviously, I think they were kind of bots in a way, just wanted to try to stir up trouble, to say the least. There too. Not gonna go into the
yeah,
details, but it was the wrong sort of comments. It was almost like, dude, why are you out here making drama? Just enjoy the music for one thing. I'm trying my best here.
yeah. Right. Yeah, the people get really they like to put their voice out there when their face isn't attached to it.
I do you.
Fortunately, that's the era of social media for you.
That's for sure. All right.
Yeah,
Well, thank you so much right there too. And your support does mean a lot here as well. So,
definitely.
uh, but going back to COVID a little bit here too, since you're out of the Queens area right there in New York, I guess how's it been? I guess since COVID really, because obviously I think you're a '90s kid, so obviously I don't think you were around when really metal and all, let alone death metal, really went off in Queens or let alone everywhere else. So I guess how's it been since COVID?
The scene, or to
Yeah, the music scene. Sorry.
be honest, there's not really much of one around here. It's not like what it used to be or what I used to hear it. It used to be. I mean, with so much like internet music and like DIY projects, and look, I can't talk. I mean, I'm one of them. Um, you know, the bands. I don't see a lot of bands around here, other than bands that come through on tour and stuff like that. As far as local bands, man, I don't really see that anymore, and that kind of sucks. I wish that was more of a thing. I don't even know if that has anything to do with COVID at all. I think even before COVID, like it's just kind of like you don't really see that. There's not a lot of venues playing local original music. That doesn't exist at all. But like as far as like you know metal bands or rock bands like really trying to make it and putting on shows, and I don't know, you don't really see that around here that much.
Mm. That was the same way because I mentioned earlier about a couple of interviews I did, and 2 bands I did were actually out of Florida, near the Tampa Bay area, which way back in the day, that's what they called the mecca of the heavy metal.
Mm.
So I think how the story goes, it's like New York, Florida, and maybe some parts of California, for instance. That was where like all the big metal bands came out of too.
Yeah,
Did a nice little renaissance, if we want to call it that, as well. But now, like I think even like maybe before COVID, but it seemed like COVID kind of exasperated it in a way here too, where it's almost like that whole mecca is now gone. For instance, here too. Now it seems like it's
yeah,
the same situation in New York. So that's
yeah. I think it's just I feel like it's become too easy to make music and put it out there in a way. Like again, like everyone's just on the internet now, and again, I will say I'm one of them. It is what it is. You just go with the flow of what how it works. You know what I mean? And like back in the day, I think people were hungrier. They had to work for it. They were, you had to get 4 or 5 guys together on the same night to jam and write, and you had to go to shows and hand out flyers, and and this and that. You wanted to find a musician for your band. You're posting, flyers and zines and at Sam Ash or whatever. You really had to like try and do this, and now it's almost like it's so easy and convenient to do that like no one's really out there sharing it. It's just kind of like a post on you know Instagram or Facebook, and that's just kind of like the nature of the beast now. It's almost not as fun. Like I wish I was around for like the tape trading, and like the DIY zines that were out that like had to be stapled together, by hand and mailed out. It's awesome. It's more hands on, and I think it means more to you when it's that way. And now it's just kind of you just hit post and you're done. You know.
Yeah, I know what you mean here too. I guess speaking of which, have you collaborated with anybody on your Purge of Relics sort of project?
No, I haven't. Not that I wouldn't. Just haven't yet. I just kind of really been just trying to make it my own thing. The idea, the idea of maybe a guest vocalist or something is pretty cool. I don't know where I'm going with it. Unfortunately, just like with life, it's just so hard to like the idea of forming like a full band is kind of cool. But then you think about logistically, like how to do that, and like you just apply that to like life. It's just like work and just like home life, and it's just very time consuming. I wish I had time for it, but like again, like I'm just part of that machine too. The same machine I was just complaining about, I'm part of it. Like it's like it's just easy. I got my computer. I can program everything and make it sound like however I want, all on my own. It's just it's just so much easier. But it's one of those things that it would be kind of cool in a fantasy land to like bring it to life and make it like a full living, breathing 4-piece, 5-piece band and see those songs on stage. But right now there's no real plans for that. But as far as like a collaboration, that's a cool idea down the pike sometime.
Pretty much most of the songs I've pretty much done so far have all been collabs, just on my little music project. And
yeah,
I prefer to actually do that better because first off, it's equal all between us here too. We'll split the proceeds however it goes. But since I'm just strictly a drummer and sometimes even a vocalist, I do some growls every now and again. But
yeah,
I think it's better to do it that way. And because one, I do work a couple jobs, so really I don't have the time to try to make my own music. So
right, yeah,
do
it's
it.
tough, man. I mean, it took me like months to finish a minute and a half long song. The first Purge of Relics album took me like 3.5 years to finish, and it does not sound like a album that took 3.5 years. You know what I mean? It's not like this Devin Townsend's quality of production. It's very raw, which I wanted it that way anyway. But like, if I actually had the time to work on it on a regular basis, probably could have got it done in like 6 months, and here I am taking 3.5 years to do it just because that's how much gap of time goes on in between working on it. Sometimes just you get caught up with shit and, have to take a break. So
I know
and that's
Tampa
just,
has the More Sound records. I guess does New York have a big studio that's kind of known for, I guess, bringing in big time artists and I guess known for its production?
if it does, I don't even know if they're around anymore. I mean, there's some smaller production studios here or there, but as far as like the really big ones, I'm not really sure. Don't quote me on that though, because I'm a little out of the loop. Like, don't really know. There could be some big one right now that people are going to hear this and be like, dude, you got such and such right down the block or whatever. I don't know. I don't, I'm not really like on the radar of what studios are around here. I mean, I know they exist, but as far as like the big ones, I'm not sure.
It'd be one of those funny stories where your next door neighbor is the studio manager of this big own production studios or whatever. So
Yeah, this whole time, like, yeah, I could have been. I'm sweating trying to take 10 minutes to program a drum beat, and I got some guy right next door this whole time that could be doing it for me.
technically story of my life. That's what we want to say. So let's see why. But I think the problem is a lot of bands these days, they want to be more tribute bands. Is that what you're kind of seeing a little bit more of? Is tribute and maybe cover bands?
Yeah, uh, yeah, definitely. Like it is more tribute and cover bands playing the bar scenes and stuff like that. You know that's kind of what I was trying to say before. I didn't really elaborate on that, but like as far as like, it's not like there isn't any live music around here, but it's just mostly that. You know, I mean, that's what it is. It's covers and tributes and stuff like that. As far as like real hungry musicians playing original music, you know, there's no scene like that. It really has been taken over by just like tributes and cover bands.
That it seems like, and actually, it kind of leads into this here a little bit. But a couple weeks ago, I actually did see a post. It was like it was this AI pic with like a big fat white guy who was on top of a jackass or something here. But apparently, this guy was using AI music, and it was getting like 60,000 followers. And obviously, people were kind of bitching and moaning about that too. So, and it's weird that Spotify has not done anything about that. But at the same time, you also see Spotify talking about it. It costs next to nothing to make content here too. And so I know you mentioned about Bandcamp earlier here too, but I guess what other streaming platforms and social media do you use to get your music out there?
As far as the music, well, I go through DistroKid. So DistroKid handles everything. That you know, it puts it everywhere. You upload it there, and it goes to Spotify, iTunes, even Deezer, iHeartRadio. It goes to all the major platforms. So it's basically on everything. I probably don't even know half the things it's on because I put on things, and you know, it just adds it to store. You know, so it's cool like that. But it's definitely in all like your major streaming services through DistroKid. Bandcamp, I manually uploaded to that myself because DistroKid doesn't work through Bandcamp. You have to do it on your own. So I like Bandcamp though. I even download a lot of music off that myself. It's a great platform.
Yeah. And I guess so. What do you make of Spotify? Because I know you said Spotify was coming a little bit later, but I guess what do you make of those comments? You just want to keep your music on Spotify and see what happens, or are you going to try to be one of those people at some point to just back away from it? Because that's what some people have done so far.
I know. Well, you know what it is like for me. I know people are worried about like as far as like how they're paying artists. And look, if you are a artist who is out there trying to make your living off your music, it's not just a hobby, um, and that means something to you. I understand that. For me, like I'm not really out there trying to like make a living off it. It's kind of like whatever happens, happens. So like I'm not expecting to make a lot of money anyway, to be honest. So like to me, it doesn't matter how much they're paying their how much they're going to pay me or not pay me because you know I'm not moving units like that. You know, just me, my little corner here as a solo project. So I'm honestly not that concerned for myself personally, but I can see why other musicians out there who are trying to make this their life would be pissed off with how they're conducting their business.
Actually, was a friend of mine, Keith Dombrowski from the Nightfall band. Have you heard about him before?
I'm sorry, what's the band?
Nightfall.
It doesn't ring a bell.
He's a real good friend of mine, and actually, he got out of surgery recently. It was actually a really major intensive surgery, so recommend go check out his interview on my Spotify and YouTube channel. But he had told me about a bill that Congress meant to pass, which I'm not sure it's going to because you know how lobbying that sort of thing goes.
Yeah.
So basically, it was to help make musicians earn a better wage, to say the least. Just put it in simple terms. Basically, bands like sites like Spotify, for instance, they may raise their subscription prices, but then they'll give you a penny per stream. I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
So
penny per stream. That actually sounds like a lot because you see like the breakdowns and it's like 0.00000 per like 10 streams or whatever it is. It's ridiculous. Like it is like a joke, like how they pay. Like I said, like I'm not too concerned with it because I don't know, call me negative, but I'm not like thinking like my music's gonna take off that far anywhere where like that's gonna really be a concern to me. But like to someone who is trying to make a living off this, that's tough. I don't blame them at all.
No, in your case, it'd just be icing on the cake whenever you think about it, if it ever were to get to that point. But just check out Keith, and then check out some of his posts here too. He also tries to help out musicians. I know he talked about trying to create a fund for musicians so that they can earn a little bit more for their music. So try to
Yeah,
recommend him. He's a real great guy too. So God bless you,
definitely.
Keith. So,
So
all right. But let's stop being negative here. Let's go ahead and jump into this right here. So
yeah,
okay. So I know you mentioned about some of the gear that you have. So I guess if you just want to reiterate some of it, I guess some other gear that you use for your music production, go ahead.
sure. It's very bare minimal, as I mentioned before. As far as my DAW, I'm just using crappy old Ableton A8 Live Suite that I think I cracked like 10 or 15 years ago, whenever it was, and some free drum samples. Man, that's all it is. I mean, I would definitely upgrade in the future. I'm not attached to it. I would like to, you know, join the 21st century and actually, use some like better stuff. But as far as my production equipment, that's what that is. Instruments, I have a LTD series, a F205 bass. I have an Ibanez five. They're all 5-string actually. Uh, Guitar is like a Epiphone, like a knockoff Epiphone too. Like it's just like really cheap equipment. You can go a long way with plugins, man. I mean, I like amps. Like I said, like if I was in a band, I would definitely like to go with amps. But convenience of this at home basement producer world. Plugins are just so damn convenient. Uh, so it's like I think Guitar Rig 5. You know, really old, outdated shit, but I make it work. For what it is. Purge of Relics isn't really supposed to sound all that pretty anyway. I like it sounding really raw and kind of nasty and disgusting. So that's it works that way. I could kind of hide behind it, with that style. If I was going to try to do something a little bit more polished, I definitely probably have to step up my production gear. But it works for my death metal, power violence, hardcore kind of vibe that I'm going for with Purge of Relics.
Well, then again, metal isn't supposed to be all polished and everything here too. I know what you mean here too, but it's kind of meant to be like not colorful to say the least. It's not meant to be like very pretty or anything like that in terms of
Yeah.
metal. So I can see what you mean. So it's all good.
Yeah.
I'm always surprised about Ableton here too because I've always heard people say like Ableton's more for the rap and hip hop here too, but I've heard some people who've done like metal and rock say like they use it too. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's. I mean, I know what you're talking about. I've heard that too. Like Ableton is big in the rap world. Um, but yeah, it's when it comes down to it. Once the plugins is what makes it, and the samples. It's all in the mixer. It doesn't. I don't really think any DAW really has to be geared specifically towards any particular genre.
true. So I can't argue with you on that. That's normally how it goes, and you think people would finally get that memo after a while, but I
Yeah,
keep saying it.
I know. Like I think metal. Like I think you hear more people using like Reaper. I believe. I hear that name pop up a lot. Maybe like Pro Tools. I know Exodus. I remember when their latest album came out, Persona non grata. Gary Holt was doing like some blogs during the recording process, and he was using Pro Tools for that album. Which Exodus is cool, but like again, like just speaking of like the polish, like that new album. I mean, vicious riffs, but like the production was so crisp and clear that it almost was like too sterile. Like like it almost took away from like the heaviness of it. Um, just to make a note back to what we're talking about as far as like metal production and you know, but yeah, he was using Pro Tools. So I know Pro Tools you hear come up uh, to this day in the metal scene. But I know Reaper's like a big name.
Talk about Reaper here too. In one of the interviews, I actually had somebody who actually complained about how bad Reaper was because it was free, and
Mm.
I guess they tried to use it, and it just ended up being a nightmare because they just could not get everything to line up. So,
Oh yeah,
so
yeah. Like with this project, I was basically using what I had. You know, like I have no delusions that I got like a great setup. Like it really is just like you you got a shitty old version of Ableton, 15-year-old computer, and a few guitars, and make it work.
make the magic happen. All we need are these guys. So,
That's right. That's right.
let's see why. I
And
guess
a
so
good
speaking of, oh, sorry, what were you gonna say?
and a good ear.
That too.
You know.
These guys.
Yeah.
So, let's see why. Yeah, no, sorry, I was going to lead into this question right here. So I guess when you're creating a song, for instance, here too, do you normally create like a riff and then try to build off of that, or do you do lyrics first and then come back to music?
Lyrics are last. Uh, well, lyrical ideas can come happen at any point, and I write those down. But as far as phrasing the lyrics and everything, that comes later. Maybe I'll have a phrase that pops in my head, and then, well, that sounds sick. I'll write that down and save that for later. Um, but as far generally, the process usually starts with a riff. I'm usually just sitting down with my guitar. May not even be plugged in. I may just be like plucking away at it. I'll take my phone, um, just with the voice recorder, and just like get real close to it, and just so you can pick up the notes and save it for later. And then usually once I get like a couple of riffs going that work together, I'm like, all right, that's enough to work with for now, and then I'll take it to the computer, to the workshop, so to speak, and throw some drums on it, and then that's usually when I finish like the arrangement. And but yeah, it always starts. It always starts with a riff.
Let's say the workshop.
Yeah, that's all right. You gotta take it to the shop. That's what that is. You know, tinker.
Everyone's got a name for something. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
there's always man cave. So I mean, I like
yeah.
it.
So it usually starts with like I hear it in my head, but I need at least a couple of riffs to get it going. And then once I have a couple of riffs where it starts to sound like it could be possibly maybe a song, then that's when I take it to Ableton and so this way I can actually, okay, let's bring this to life. Let's see what it sounds like with some drums on it. And you know.
I see. And I know you talked earlier about lyrics, so I guess let's go ahead and jump into that question right here too. So I guess, what do your lyrics normally talk about?
My lyrics are basically calling out uh, humanity on its bullshit, which honestly isn't. When you talk about metal and hardcore, it probably isn't the most original idea. Admittedly, I mean they're all about society. But yeah, it's kind of calling out the fact that we're kind of like slaves of our own creations. Some of the foundational constructs of society that we've created, and now we're just governed by them, and we seem to not be aware or just choose to ignore that they're the problem, and we don't really do anything to change them. Um, you know, uh, whatever it be, religion or politics. The fact that we even have lines in the sand between countries and continents, and just all these things that just separate us and divide, and you know uh, currency, even money, just like these pieces of paper and pieces of metal that we kill ourselves and each other over, um, and we just don't really do anything to change it. We we're by leaps and bounds the most advanced species on the planet, and we could do it, and we're also aware of our mortality, and yet this is the best we can come up with. So it's like we can't do anything to change this. We're okay how everything is right now. Really, all right. So I just kind of talk about that and call us out on that, and I say us because again, I'm not trying to be like a rebel here, that I'm not a part of it. I mean, I can't change it by myself, so the best you could do is just roll with it. Um, but that's what I talk about. A lot of what another thing I talk about is, it comes up in my lyrics sometimes, is just how much of our lives we spend just working ourselves to death, um, working 50, 60 hours a week or whatever it is, until we're like 65 years old, and barely getting by, and like it's like we know, we are aware of our mentality. That's how we choose to live our lives, and as a society and civilization, we don't seem to do anything to change it. So yeah, it's really fun, happy-go-lucky stuff. Not offering any solutions, just complaining, But yeah, it's angry shit. But it's things I really think about, and really feel, and it things that really kind of came to the forefront of my mind, like during the pandemic, like when you were able to step back and take a look at what's going on, because like that was the first time we could think of in our lives that like life has literally been paused. We're just going, going, going. You never thought like, holy crap, like when this actually everything came to a pause, you could actually stop and look at it.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's metal. We're always meant to be angry and talk about something,
It's
let
like,
alone complaining.
it was the perfect like bedding for it. Like, like it was just like, oh, I'm gonna write some heavy shit. What can I talk about? It's like, okay, well, I've been kind of mulling these ideas around in my head. This is the perfect foundation for it.
Yeah, you ain't lying. And I know you mentioned about new metal earlier. So I guess you think about how Slipknot, Mudvayne, Korn, and all those guys came out with their first album here too. It was like, damn, that's a lot of emotion and anger in that. So
Yeah.
I guess you're at Korn. I guess which one would you say was your favorite new metal group in the late '90s and early 2000s?
Well, Korn was the first one. I think Korn. I mean, there was a few bands I got into as far as heavy music all at the same time. So like it was Korn, it was Rage Against the Machine, it was Metallica. That was, and even like Marilyn Manson. As far as like hard rock and metal as a kid, those were the four that I got exposed to at first that kind of started pushing me in that direction. But as far as new metal specifically, Korn was the first one I heard. I was obsessed with Korn, 15, 16 years old. Kind of grew out of it now, like it's hit or miss now. I listen back to it, I get a little nostalgic. I'm like, man, some of it's pretty cool. Like, as far as I'm concerned, if when it comes to Korn's discography, if I had to pick one, it would be Life is Peachy. I thought that album was really, even listening to it now, is such a sick, dark, like tone to it. I know everyone likes to go with like the first album is like the classic. I'm not really that big on it. I feel like it's a little dated. I listen to it, it's like a little cringy. But like Life is Peachy, man, that's dope. But yeah, Korn. I was a big Slipknot fan at first. I haven't been in years. As far as I was like one of the best metal albums ever made. That album is insane. But I feel like they took a dip after that, in my opinion. But yeah, hey, I admitted to Limp Bizkit. What are you going to do? They're fun, See, I played Significant Other like crazy at the time.
I'd say Limp Bizkit was more of the trashy. Well, I was trying to think of the word. More profane version of Linkin Park. Whenever you think about it. So
yeah.
I don't want to say trashy. I'm sorry. So that was the wrong sort of word. That's basically profane.
Honestly, Fred Durst would probably agree with you. He would take that flag and probably roll with it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've been keeping up with Limp Bizkit nowadays, but I think they fully embrace their, we were the joke band of the time. I mean, they don't take themselves too seriously.
They say fuck Limp Bizkit, and nobody actually tries to do anything cross that into it.
Yeah,
I mean, it was one of those things. Like the mic seemed to be working fine, but it seemed like nobody was kind of like responding because you try to get the crowd pumped and everything there too. So it's like, wait, can you guys hear me? Wait, can you hear me out there? Oh, okay. I mean, it was kind of one of those embarrassing moments, to say the least. So
yeah, it happens.
Yeah, that's for sure. I will say from the first album with Korn, I'd say "Daddy." That song "Daddy" that was pretty strong. I'm gonna admit that, as well as the emotion at the end of that song.
Yeah, that's one that still to this day comes up a lot. I see people still talk about that song more than anything else. Yeah, definitely the emotion was there. I think the sound of that album, I feel like they just stepped it up on Life is Peachy. Yeah, but you can't deny the emotion behind the lyrics and the performance. I think that's what put them above anything else at the time. That's what made them stand out. I think that's when music really started getting dark on like a mainstream level. When it was okay to like talk about those things in song. I think grunge kind of started that a little bit, but it was, I think Korn took it to like a more visceral level.
I feel grunge was more poetic whenever you think about it. Even though they might have talked about dark subjects, it's probably more poetic, to say the least.
Yeah, that's what I was going for. That's true. It is. They were going with the very, very dark, emotional subject matter, but it was definitely more poetic and just kind of. It was a little bit more. I wouldn't say vague, but then it was just like Korn just went right out there and told you what they were talking about.
I will say Blind. That's always the great opener song.
Oh,
Like, are you ready?
that's one of those anthems. I mean, you can't deny that.
That's for sure. So I know I talked about Slipknot. Which Slipknot album did you say was your favorite?
Iowa. I mean, the first one was groundbreaking. I mean, when I first heard the first self-titled, I mean, that was insane too. There was nothing like that at the time. But I feel like Iowa is where they just ramped it up to 1,000, and that still holds up to me. I usually put that up there with one of the best metal albums of all time. I don't. Maybe some purists may not agree with that, but fuck it. The production again, immense, huge, scary, terrifying production. The performances are off the chain. Corey was like unhinged. The whole band was unhinged at the time. I know the story behind that. That's what makes the album great too. It has a great story. I mean, they tell you they were going through some bad times during that recording of that. Very cool. I feel like after that they got a little too polished again, and we're getting a little more mainstream. They kind of lost me after that, but nothing will change Iowa for me. That was great.
That is true. And you kind of think like, boy, you guys were in that sort of dark period. How the hell did you guys even stay together the whole time, to be honest? So
yeah, right.
But I will say, from their self-titled album, I would say "Scissors" is a song that always seems to freak me out in some sort of way. I don't know why. So
Yeah,
I think it's because they reached that halfway point, yeah, and it just changes completely.
yeah. They were doing some crazy stuff on that first album. I mean, it wasn't all just bangers. They were doing some really like creepy, atmospheric stuff on there too. That was it really set a nasty tone.
I think Corey was actually. I want to say an auditorium sort of setting. But I think he actually got a question from a fan about what the song "Iowa" was actually about, and I think he was saying like how messed up he was mentally, let alone like what sort of alcohol and drugs he was on. I think he was. I think some of that screaming and some of the what sounds like pain sort of screams whenever you think about it too. I think he was. I think he was saying he was cutting himself. To be honest.
Yeah, that was a story. I think he was doing that during Iowa as well. There's like 20 minutes, maybe not even, maybe 15 minutes of footage of them recording that album on YouTube somewhere, which is kind of cool to see because now everything's documented. But back then, that wasn't really the thing. So like any like little snippets of VHS you find is pretty sick, and you could see like him recording some of his vocal takes. Really dark room. They're all just standing around, so it's very very brooding and menacing looking. And it was very cool, like peek behind the curtain a little bit, and like his voice too. Like you see on the later stuff, it's almost a testament to how much he gave on that album Iowa and the first one too, because you could tell his voice is ripped to shreds now. He does not have the same. I mean, he's older now too, but even like right after Iowa, it was like you could tell like he gave it all for that album because almost for the worse because his voice was never the same after that.
He seems to try, to his credit. I think on some of like the later stuff, it seems like he tries pretty well. So, these are my opinion. I don't know what everyone else thinks. So, I think he's still trying, and it seems like it's there at times.
Yeah, he like I said, like I mean, it could have improved. I haven't heard a lot of like the newer stuff. I haven't been really paying attention that much to Slipknot like recently. I just know like after the couple of albums after Iowa, like you kind of like you could tell the difference. You could tell it was like he just didn't have the same power. Maybe he healed up. Maybe maybe he was doing vocal lessons. Maybe he just got a second wind and he's killing it again. That can happen too.
Regardless, though, congratulations to Slipknot for 25 years. And actually, we celebrate that recently. I guess it was back in June when they actually came out with their self-titled first album. So
yeah, and they were wearing like the old school jumpsuits and stuff. I was actually thinking about going even because I knew they were going to play a lot of old stuff, but then I saw the ticket prices and I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm good. I'll stick to my $15 hardcore matinee or whatever, you know.
that's for sure. And I guess it kind of leads into this, even though I don't think ticket prices are kind of a big issue for you. But I guess what challenges do you face these days as a musician?
So I would say, I mean, it again, like I said before, like I'm not really out there like pushing it and trying to like make it like this huge thing or full time musician. So I'm kind of spared from the probably a lot of the struggles that like a lot of punk musicians are going through. Um, I I don't really worry about how much money I'm bringing into it or the exposure. This is it's cool to do things like this. I'm not saying I don't want anyone to hear it. Obviously, I want people to hear my music, but like I'm not like going out on. Um, I know there are people out there, as far as like the Spotify payments. It's really tough now. It's really and it's so saturated now too. There's so many people out there that can just do it on their own. That like it's just like there's just so much out there to fight through more than ever. Uh, that's why it's hard to stand out, especially like a lot of like with this kind of music too. I mean, it's out there who are just pushing it to like this new level that's really hard to keep up with. And you got band like out there. I don't know if Knock Loose out there now. That's like completely no, Knock Loose is badass, man. I'm not gonna lie, but they set a bar for like brutality. So like if you're like a heavy band, like that's what you're competing with. You know. But as far as my struggle personally, I'm just doing it. I'm just chilling. I'm just doing my thing, writing it, putting it out there. Uh, Trying to just tell people as many people as I can reach about it. They listen to it, great. If not, it's all good. Obviously, Purge Relics. If you took me to listen to it, it's not something that I'm mainstream radio play. It's kind of got a restriction on it, and I'm cool with that. I could always start some other projects with more accessible music if I wanted to. I have a diverse palette, so
That's pretty good to hear. So earlier you mentioned about the social media that you're a part of here too. So I guess for those musicians on social media, or I guess even in your neck of the woods as well, I guess what sort of advice would you give to musicians and people out there?
stay off the AI. AI has its place, but it should be very limited as far as the creative aspects. I'm seeing a lot of like AI generated artwork, and like you mentioned before, the AI generated music. Um, I think AI should just be relegated to turning the lights on and off, and putting in an Amazon order for you if you want. But stay the fuck out of creativity. That's what I got to say about that. Because that's no good. Um, yeah, I'm not about that at all. Like, I'll put an asterisk next to it. If you're making, if you have to make stock art, it's something you have to get out there real quick. Like, I know, there's people on Facebook. They have podcasts and, they put out playlists out there and like they make covers, artwork for the playlist. Like, look, I'm not expecting you to make a whole brand new, unique part of, artwork for each and every playlist you put out. That's one thing. But like, if you're making a standalone piece of art, that it should be completely hands on. So to sum it up, I would just say, make your art from the ground up, make it from scratch and make it all come from you. Don't rely on a computer to do it for you. It's one thing like graphic design, but as long as you're making it, you know what I mean? But when you're just typing in a few words into a computer and letting it come up with something for you, that's not art.
Yeah, I have had other indie musicians in our indie community, which is a band together on Facebook. So strongly recommend you go and join that for first off. But
Cool.
Yeah, people have mentioned since they're tight on budgets for one thing or two, obviously, because some of these people they got families of their own, they're working multiple jobs to meet ends. So they use AI strictly more for like making like that album cover, for instance. So
Yeah.
in your case, it seems to be along those lines as well. Like, hey, you can use it when you're tight on budgets and stuff like that here too, but don't go so far as like making the whole music scene, let alone try to like sell it for like
Yeah.
say it's like the next Leonardo da Vinci sort of painting or something like that.
Right. Yeah. That to me is not cool. Yeah, it's the one thing. I know we're making a lot of technological advancements, but like art wasn't really supposed to be about technological advancements. Art is supposed to come from you, you know. So yeah, like again, like you said, like budget cuts are, but tight budget. You need something fast. It's not like I said, like something you have to put out in bulk. I get it. But yeah, when it comes to like your music, or if you claim to be a visual artist and your art is coming from a computer, then you're not the artist. The computer is. You know.
The Terminator is the artist in this case. So
I mean, I know the world has seen Terminator 2. Did they not learn anything? Come on now.
I mean, we would hope so, but I mean, I digress at this point because at this point we have to hopefully hope people know how to use their brains the right way, and then just be like, okay, let's regulate this before it gets way too out of hand. I mean, that's you got to have some red flags going off here too. So let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Tread carefully.
Yeah.
Okay. So Ken, we beat the questions here pretty good. So here, let's jump into some fun ones. Ready?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So start here with the first one, I guess. So what would you consider as your favorite food?
Man, I like Indian food. I'm big. I mean, I'm into a lot of different cuisines, but Indian was the first one to come to mind. A few honorable mentions, sushi and Thai and Italian. Pretty much
Well, of course, you
everything.
got to have Italian. You can't disrespect the Italians. I
Yeah,
mean, it's New York too. I mean, there's a good amount of Italians.
yeah. I like to eat, so yeah, I could give you a lot of different answers for that. But let's go with Indian food is number one.
Is there a particular sort of Indian food? Because I was trying to remember one we got from HelloFresh. I can't remember it, but wasn't too much of a fan of it. But I guess which specific sort of Indian food are you really into?
I like what's the dish? It's called saag. It's like a spinach puree. They add cumin to it. That's pretty much a one of the more basic Indian ingredients in Indian food. Cumin is that spice. Um, yeah, that's my go-to.
All right, good choice. All right.
And you
For the
get
next one,
lamb or beef, whatever meat you want to put in it.
oh, so they do put meat in it too. Does it sound like a veggie dish?
It's usually served over rice. Yeah.
All right, fair enough too. I'd say you always got to have a little meat in it. I mean, we got some sort of carnivores, so. I thought the punk guys were always meant to be more the vegetarians, to be honest. So, but
Yeah.
stereotype, but so,
Yeah. No, not here.
not here. Okay. Okay. Well, sorry, I meant to jump into this question here. I jumped too soon, but
Also,
for our next question here, I guess, what would you consider as your favorite movie?
Pulp Fiction. I'm a Tarantino guy. Yeah.
English, motherfucker, do you speak it?
Well, yeah. Quote that movie all day long. Yeah.
Actually, we talked about Ugly Hunger Force earlier here, too. There was that one scene. I guess Shake ended up on an island. I guess he got knocked around this, like, old Mayan pinball machine. And afterwards, this turkey starts up and starts talking to him, too, like, you've been justly punished. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
I remember that one. I remember that when you were talking. That's one of the earlier episodes. Yeah.
I thought it was later, but I don't know how it goes. But basically, it was kind of like this one. It was like, speak English. Why is that not a law everywhere? So
Get canceled for jokes like that now.
apparently, yeah. Sadly, to say the least. But excellent choice here too. Love Quentin Tarantino as well.
Yeah.
Even though, truth be told, there was a friend of mine who lives out in California. He said he actually met Quentin Tarantino, that it was not a good experience. So it seems like good in the movies, not good as a person, though.
Yeah, that's not surprising to me. I mean, he seems like quite
the character to say the least. You know, I'll watch his movies. I don't need to. I don't need to meet the man behind the movies.
I guess so. You always think it would be nice, but apparently the ego all goes to head. In his case, it kind of inflated his head too.
Yeah,
He had a big head.
he's quite the character.
That's for sure. All right, but excellent choice nonetheless, you two. All right, and next one right here. I guess in terms of drinks, first off, do you drink alcohol?
Yes, I'm a big beer guy. I'm a beer snob.
Like I said, which would you say is your favorite alcoholic drink and non-alcoholic drink?
Favorite alcoholic drink is the Dogfish Head 120-minute IPA. It's like 15 to 20% proof of ABV a bottle. So yeah, it's pretty strong stuff. It's definitely not to chug; it's to sip respectfully. If they serve it in a restaurant, they actually only have a limit. They have a limit of 2 per person. They won't serve you more than 2. And a 4-pack is like almost $50. So it's some good stuff, but it's definitely, you want to savor it. But it's great stuff. Non-alcoholic, water. I don't know. I'm not really a soda guy anymore. Not really like a big sugary drink guy. I need water to offset the beer.
Yeah, you get sober again, or sober a lot quicker after chugging 2 of those IPAs.
Helps with the headaches.
That too, yeah.
Yeah.
And, I was never really a big fan of IPAs. I mean, the problem was I drank a couple because I was actually doing a little golf outing with some friends. It
Yeah.
really soured my mood for some reason. I don't know if it was because it was high, in this case, high concentration. I don't know what.
Are you a beer guy? Are you a beer guy at all, or is it like different kind of beer you're into, or are you just not an IPA guy?
I would say I'm not an IPA guy, but I do like the ciders. I tend to really get into Angry Orchard for the light ones.
Yeah, I like the ciders too. Nothing wrong with that. They don't all have to be like knock you on your ass like level. Like sometimes it's good to have something a little refreshing.
I would say I like to taste my beer, to be honest, too, without a strong alcohol taste. So
yeah. Oh yeah, no, you that 120, you smell it right on the nose. Like once you put the glass to you know what you're drinking. It hits the nostrils first.
it's like all of a sudden it's like an explosions just went off up the nostrils and everything too. So
Yeah.
actually, I will say the best beer I ever had, it was in Munich at the Hofbräuhaus. It was a German style beer.
Oh, of course. That's
That's the best beer I ever had.
They know their beer.
Absolutely. Maybe a lot more than the Irish do. So
Yeah.
I think the Irish always like to go with the Guinness and go a little heavier. So
Yeah, that's the thing.
apparently. Yeah. So, Germans know how to have a good time. We'll say that much. So all right. For the last fun questions, what would you say is currently your favorite song or a song you've been listening to a good bit recently?
What I've been listening to recently. I feel like I've been barely listening to any music because I've been so busy like mixing my last song that's all I've been listening to is my own stuff, but not even because I love it so much, just because it's just I listen to every song 1,000 times before I decide that it's worthy of being released. One song, man. I don't know what's hit me right now. I guess we have to go back to Knock Loose again. As far as like the heavy stuff, that new album they put out, Suffolk, and you won't go before you're supposed to, and the song they put out with Poppy, Suffocate, I think is brutal. The reggaeton breakdown is insane. That's really cool. That's like a new Earth song that I'm listening to. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that one. I'm going blank. There's so many, so many songs.
I mean, you can't go wrong with Knock Loose, but have they been releasing full albums or are they just mainly doing like singles now?
No, they just released the full album. So they were doing singles for a while. They did that dual single thing they did. I forgot what Deep in the Willow and Everything is Quiet Now, where it was like almost like the music video was like a movie, like a horror movie. And then they released Suffocate, and then they dropped the whole album like a few weeks ago now.
You know.
I know them and Motionless in White kind of got together to do Slaughterhouse and then Slaughterhouse 2.
Yeah, that song's pretty cool. And I'm not a Motionless in White fan, but that feature on the Knock Loose album was pretty sick. It's brutal. That album is produced like, I heard like the producer on the new Knock Loose album was more like a hip hop producer, which makes sense because the drums are boomy as fuck. Like the kick drums are like insane. You know.
I mean, hey, you sometimes get those nice little mix-ups every now and again too. It seems to really work out for better or worse. In this case, it was for the better. So
Yeah.
So that's good to hear. And Blinding Faith, that was another one they did.
Yeah. That's like it opens up with Thirst. Thirst is I think it's like a blast beat and just screaming, just right in your face. It's like it just starts like 0 to 60 right away.
Kind of like how a traditional Ferrari should go. So it's a way. Yeah. So, again, we briefed through the questions here pretty good. So we are down to one more question. And I guess before we jump into it, did you have any questions you want to ask me or any final words you want to say before we jump into it?
I guess I'll just take this second just to give a shameless plug. That the new single "Death by Integrity" is on Spotify tomorrow, and iTunes and basically everything. If you don't want to wait till then, it is already up on Bandcamp to download. If you want to, you could download any amount you want, or even 0. It's fine with me. I mean, that's all I got right now, and I'm slowly but surely working on a new album, and hopefully we'll have it out before I'm, 50.
On those lines, yeah. Actually, a quick question about the new single, because there actually was a song by Dying Fetus. I know you mentioned about Dying Fetus earlier. There was a song they had by Die with Integrity. I guess, was that kind of an inspiration for this one?
No, I guess that's like, and I am a Fetus fan. The song, the single is just along it's the idea that when you're the only one, you come to this realization that you're the only one doing the right thing, the only one operating on merit and values, and everyone around you is not following the same standard, and basically just taking advantage of your goodwill and your good deeds, and not leaving you anything to reap from it. Here you are trying to be the good guy, and you got nothing to show for it, and everyone else is just taking advantage and reaping the benefits. So that's the idea of death by integrity. It's like your integrity is wearing you away, and it's almost like a question of, do I just join them? Do I, fuck it. If you can't beat them, join them. I'll just become I'll just lower my standards to their level because it's just wearing me down. I'm not getting anything out of it. So yeah, that's the meaning of that. I'm not really sure what the meaning of the dying field, how they approach it. Die with integrity, death by integrity is very close, maybe in some way, and it's about the same thing. But I don't know. I would like to say mine is better, but probably not, because Fetus are the kings of of extreme death metal. So they probably got me beat, but that's all good. I mean, it's something to aspire to.
You see, John Gallagher actually finally started growing hair out.
I know. That's crazy. It took me 5 minutes to even realize who I was looking at the first time I saw that. I'm like, oh man, I thought it was someone covering Dying Fetus. And it was, and oh crap, this is actually Dying Fetus. That's John Gallagher. Yeah, looks like a trucker.
I know, we've been so used to the bald head. I guess maybe some facial hair, but he was always doing the bald head deal the whole time.
I feel like that's like a thing that some of the guys are doing now. Like it's a contest or something, like no shave November or something. Like Jamie Josta from Hatebreed did the same thing now too. He's got his hair long and a beard.
It's either like Plato, where they just had to do this. Like it all just comes out the head right there and everything too.
It does seem like it just happened overnight.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, COVID kind of a lot of them like just sit back and relax. So I guess they just pass the time, to be honest. So
yeah.
But shout out to Dying Fetus nonetheless here too. They were actually my first death metal band that got me into death metal. So
yeah, nice. That's a good one to start.
Surprisingly, it was the first.
Yeah,
it took me a while too. I will confess, it was Homicidal Retribution. That was the song that got me into it.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. I was Destroy the Opposition, Stop at Nothing. That was like those were the two albums that got me hooked on them. One Shot, One Kill. Absolutely, that's a masterpiece.
I would say Destroy the Opposition because he had Jason Efferton on that, and those two really seem to work like peanut butter and jelly.
I'm a huge Misery Index fan. Huge. I'm surprised actually. I didn't. I should have mentioned them earlier when we were talking about influences, because like that was like probably the main band that I thought of as far as my approach and like the sound I was going for when I started Purge of Relics. Is like I was basically like studying Misery Index albums, like that. Like their blend of hardcore with death metal and grind is like flawless. It's like it's the perfect concoction of all those things, and altogether becomes its own unique thing. Yeah, Misery Index and Nails are probably my two biggest influences for Purge of Relics, especially Nails going forward. I'm hooked on that nasty, brutal power balance approach. Which the new song is you'll definitely hear is going in that direction.
As I have heard Nails, it was an Imposing Will. I guess they came out with a new album or something recently.
Yeah, it's their first album in 8 years. They were gone for a while, so the new album's coming out in August, I think, and that's the first single. I actually got tickets to see them in September, so I'm excited for that. Yeah, although it's all new band, the only original member is Todd Jones, the guitarist and vocalist. It's his project. The other guys left, so he's got a whole new group. But I'm sure it'll be great.
Yeah, I know John Gallagher had to go through something similar with Dying Fetus after Destroy the Opposition. That's the whole thing with One Shot, One Kill, and then Stop at Nothing.
I will be honest. I wish Dying Fetus would go back to a 4-piece. Or wait, are they? Oh yeah, they're only a 3-piece right now. I wish they had that second guitar up there. It just would sound better, but still sick nonetheless.
Yeah, that's for sure. So keep on rocking, and I do love Misery Index as well. So
hell yeah,
that much common. So great choices. Right. Do you have anything else, or is it okay we jump into the last question?
I think we're good. Go ahead, shoot.
All right. So, given what COVID has done, obviously it seems you've been pretty blessed. I know you kind of went through some hard times with the family right there, but it seems like you're all doing okay and everything. But for those musicians and people who have been impacted by COVID or anything else in their lives, what sort of message of hope could you give to musicians and people out there as we try to move forward in the post-COVID world?
Well, like I said, as long as you stay away from the AI, you'll be okay. Don't let that take over. Don't let it in too much. As far as that goes, I mean, I wish I had something really concrete to say about that. Just keep going. People love music no matter what. That's always going to be something people want to hear. You just got to keep, and people will gravitate to the genuine art. When you have a message and you play with intensity, and and you keep it real, people are going to gravitate to that. No matter what, when you're trying to make it in music, it's the luck of the draw. Regardless, there's nothing you can do about that. But you just got to keep pushing, and as long as you actually mean it, that's when really unique, innovative, sounds happen and music happens, and people are going to notice that. If you're just trying to jump on trends, maybe it'll work for a few minutes, but then everyone forgets about you, because guess what? The trend is a trend for a reason. Trends are because everyone's doing it. So if you jump on a trend, you're going to get lost in the shuffle. If you do something different and off the cuff and against the grain, people are going to notice that. And even if not as many people notice it as the trend, the people who do notice it are going to be, they're going to stick with you. They're going to be loyal. So that's what I would say. Just be real.
To quote Pulp Fiction, spoken like a true prodigy.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So, Ken, we reached the end of my podcast right here, and boy, did we talk for a good bit. Did you have any final words? Any shout outs you want to get before we close?
Yeah, I got some people on Facebook that I follow. Some artists that we follow each other and try to support each other when we can. Nick Lang out of UK, he's got a sick project. He does new metal, hip hop, electronic. Really diverse musician. Always really supportive. He's real cool. Duke Hester podcast family. That dude, I don't know how he has the time to put together all the playlists he puts together and of all different genres. He dedicates his whole time to just supporting independent acts, which is great. And he's put Purge of Relics on a lot of his playlists, so that's really fucking cool of him. So I just want to shout out those two. Shovel Monster, Waiting at the Bridge. I seen that you interviewed what's his name, TJ from them. I saw that's one of your videos. I don't know him personally, but again, someone that we know in passing on. We follow each other and try to support each other when we can on music. So I just want to shout out those guys. Go listen to them if anyone sees this and gives a shit what I gotta say. Listen to those people and listen to Purge of Relics too while you're at it. And that's it, man.
Actually, me and TJ, we actually collaborated. I do my little project. It's called Demiurge, and he's been mostly my big collaborator so far. I've done another one with Bond of Iniquity, but TJ's really helped out. He's a great guy.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah, he seems like a good dude. I watched a little bit of interviews. That's real down to earth. Great project too.
I would say very soft spoken, but yeah, they had a few words. That's a good thing. So
some of the heavy the guys who make the heavy music are usually they don't have to be loud spoken because their music does it for them.
That's true. Yeah. And then they're just the nicest human being you see afterwards here too. They just have to wear the show with like the whole thing. Like I always compare like death metal sort of logos, for instance, like someone just taking a bottle of mustard and then just like spraying it all over the place and be like, "There's a band name." So there you go.
That's right.
There's some of the more recent ones. It's got the point where it's like really eligible at this point here too.
Yeah. Well, I think it's become a parody of itself at this point. I think they're doing it on purpose now.
I guess so. All right. But I guess can you just tell people what streaming platforms and what your plans are for this year, as well as like what social media you're on, so they can check out your music and then maybe see if they're going to do a show or anything else?
Yeah, well, I mean, no show. It's just me, unfortunately, unless I throw a band together at some point. But as far as social media, I'm not really on a lot, to be honest. I'm not really great at social media. I use Facebook. I do have an Instagram account for Purge of Relics, but I don't really use it all that often. But I do most of my outreach through Facebook. As far as platforms, you got Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music. It's on Amazon. It's basically on everything that DistroKid throws it on. All the major platforms. If you heard of it, it's on it. Bandcamp, of course. Right now you got the first debut album. You have the War on Life single, and now the Death by Integrity single. They're all available. Death by Integrity hits streaming platforms tomorrow, but it's on Bandcamp currently. If you don't want to wait, you can just go hop on there and listen to it now. And it's my plans for the year, man. It's just trying to get a new album going and make it as savage and heavy and angry as possible. Try to go like the Power Balance Room. I have a few songs in there that are like under a minute. I'm going for that kind of stuff. It'll be cool, but it'll be a while. It takes me a minute to get these things done, with life and all.
Yeah, you're in line. So, all right. Good luck to you, babe, and best of luck out there. So,
thanks for having me, man.
No worries. But we close out like this. Everyone, my guest today was Ken Martinez, hailing from the concrete jungles of New York right there, mainly Queens. He's also known as Purge of Relics, so make sure you go check him out on the socials and everything here too. Let's go support a brother on all the streaming platforms and everything. So, Ken, I want to wish you all the best here going forward there, mate. So, you stay safe, rock on, stay tuned, y'all.
Same to you, man. Take it easy.